First topic we're going to talk about is Archicad's default object import process. So let's start with just kind of a discussion about the SketchUp SKP and Collada DAE import defaults. I'm sure many of you have used those. They're great for being able to access the 3D warehouse and numerous other types of websites and libraries and content out there on the web. But there are limitations. You know, one of the biggest, of course, is limited parametric editing. You know, when you open those objects up into Archicad, and you open that object through the object settings, you know, you've got limited custom settings here. We've got rotation, scaling, hotspots. That's about it. Now, there's no material editing. There's no preview image. And then also, if you're importing in things like a Revit RFA or IFC model or object, kind of the same thing, right? We're going to have limited parametric editing, but a little bit more. Actually, one thing that Revit does offer through the RFA format, and when it comes into Archicad, is you will see more options for parametric editing there, which is good. Now, there is no preview image, and then, of course, one of the big things for both Revit and for SketchUp, DAE, and other formats that are imported to Archicad is the issue of polygon size and polygon count, which means that it can have a big hit on the performance of the object of the model. This sink is a great example. It's interesting, when I brought the sink into Archicad, and I was a real tough time being able to access it and use it. And it's because there was 163,639 polygons for just this object. It took me 43 seconds just to click on the object, to view it, and then to change the material. And I'm sure many of you have kind of experienced this issue with other objects. And that's just because, you know, this came directly from the Color website. And, you know, we've seen a number of manufacturers, libraries out there that post objects that are just way too heavy for being able to be used in a BIM program, an application like Archicad. So we're going to kind of walk through and talk through today about how you can manage these kinds of issues. Now, one of the things that is good about using SketchUp and Revit is that when you bring in, you know, objects that are planar, such as, you know, this stove here, where, you know, it's pretty rectangular, it does produce really nice 2D graphics, and, you know, when you have objects like this, it's great. You know, there's really not an issue, unless you want to maybe edit the materials. That's when it becomes an issue. But nonetheless, in terms of the graphic there, you know, that looks fine. But when we start to bring in something that looks like it should be similar to that stove, it's a pretty rectangular cabinet here, but the sink has curves to it. The taps and on this sink also have curves to it. And so as a result, we end up with this kind of messy 2D graphic, messy 3D graphics, and it can really affect, you know, the quality of our drawings and our renderings. And so this is the kind of thing that we'll also discuss as a way that you could solve this issue and problem with the model port. And finally, one of the solutions that some people will use when they have an object like this cabinet, for example, and they want to be able to edit it, you know, but they can't edit the materials because that's not an option with parametrics or within the parameters of the object when you bring it in, is they'll convert it to a morph. And so once you convert it to morph, you can edit the material, so that does work. However, there are issues with that depending upon the object. If the object's pretty planar, it makes it easier, but then if it's planar, you may not be as necessary. But in any case, you can see here when we convert to a morph, it's going to first tell us that this is a high polygon count object. It's got a lot of polygons in here, from the curves of the sink, curves of the tap, etc. And just to be, you know, that may affect the performance of Archicad. So we go ahead and convert it, and then we start to select individual surfaces of that mesh or that morph. And as you can see here, it becomes problematic. We've got, you know, some of the surfaces have triangulations in them, so you have to select, you know, multiple triangulation components there to get, you know, it just gets really messy to try to edit all these different surfaces here. And it could take a lot of time to do that. And so while this may work on certain objects where maybe there's not as much triangulation or there's not as many surfaces, most of the time it becomes really problematic if it has an object with a lot of detail to it, which is why you typically download and want to access other objects, you don't want to build those because there's a lot of detail to those. So I'm going to talk also about how we can sort of solve that issue.